If you put a piece of modern leather into boiling water, it turns into a useless, shriveled mess. But the medieval armorers had a secret trick that did the exact opposite. It turned that same leather into a protective shell that could shrug off a blade. We've spent years looking for a material that is both lightweight and indestructible, yet we've been ignoring the solution that was literally sitting on our ancestors' workshop floors years ago. Let's break down the chemistry of Cuir Bouilli and why it's time to stop underestimating the past. Why this boiling trick worked, we have to look beneath the surface of the leather itself. Leather is essentially a network of collagen fibers, lope-like proteins held together by chemical crosslinks. In its raw, tanned state, these fibers are disorganized and flexible. This is what makes a leather boot comfortable. The fibers can slide past one another, allowing the material to bend and flex with the human body. When the medieval armorer submerged this material in hot water, he wasn't just softening it for molding, he was initiating a process of thermal denaturation. As the temperature reached a specific threshold, usually between 60 degrees Celsius and 70 degrees Celsius, the hydrogen bonds holding the collagen structure together began to break. The long, orderly chains of protein began to unravel and tangle into a dense, chaotic web. This is the same reaction that turns a piece of tough meat into a gelatinous mess in a slow cooker. But by controlling the environment, the armorer stopped the process at the exact moment of structural collapse, before the material could dissolve into glue. The technique is known in historical records as Cuir Bouilli, literally boiled leather. However, the term is slightly misleading. If a craftsman were to actually boil a piece of leather in a rolling, bubbling cauldron, he would destroy it. The proteins would rapidly hydrolyze, leaving behind a brittle, shriveled piece of charcoal-like waste. True Cuir Bouilli required the discipline of a chemist. The leather was typically treated in a bath of water, often infused with wax, resins or oils, heated just below the boiling point. By carefully monitoring the temperature and the duration of the soak, the armorer could manipulate the collagen to reach a plastic state. Once the material reached this consistency, it could be molded over a wooden form and allowed to dry. As the water evaporated, the reorganized protein fibers locked into their new, rigid configuration. The result was a material that possessed a high strength-to-weight ratio, capable of absorbing kinetic energy far better than a thin sheet of iron, which would dent and deform permanently. This process was not merely a way to kill time, it was a desperate race for survival. Imagine the training involved. An apprentice would spend years learning how to read the texture of a hide. Not every skin was created equal. A hide from an older ox was vastly superior for armor making because of the thickness and density of its collagen network. The armorer had to judge, purely by touch and sight, exactly how much tannin was present in the leather. If the leather had been improperly tanned, using the wrong barks, or left in the solution for too short a period, the boiling process would cause it to disintegrate instantly. This was a science of intuition, where a slight miscalculation in the fire's heat or the water's additives meant a wasted week of work and a ruined hide. In the 14th century, the cost of a full suit of steel plate armor was astronomical, equivalent to the price of a small farm or a luxury car by modern standards. For the vast majority of soldiers, the archers, the infantrymen, and the local militia, steel was a dream they could never afford. Cuir Bouilli provided the solution to a tactical crisis. It offered a middle ground, protection that was significantly more durable than padded cloth, but vastly more affordable and easier to repair than steel. This armor wasn't just for the poor, however. Elite knights often utilized boiled leather elements as a secondary layer, or as specialized pieces where the weight of steel would be prohibitive during long campaigns. The brilliance of this material lay in its self-healing properties. Unlike steel, which would crack or dent under high-velocity impacts, hardened leather was elastic. It would flex to dissipate the shock of a blow across its entire surface area, protecting the wearer from the blunt force trauma that was arguably more lethal than the piercing wounds of a blade. While heat was the engine of the process, the additives were the secret sauce. Medieval armorers didn't just use plain water. They infused their vats with a cocktail of substances: beeswax, tallow, pine resin, and even mineral oils. These materials served a crucial dual purpose. First, they acted as a waterproofing barrier, ensuring the armor stayed lightweight and rigid regardless of the weather. Second, these substances filled the microscopic voids between the reorganized collagen fibers. Think of it as a primitive form of composite material engineering, much like modern carbon fiber. The hardened protein provided the strength, while the resin provided the rigidity and impact resistance. It was a sophisticated synergy that allowed a simple animal skin to withstand the rigors of the 100 Years' War.
The application of these resins was an art form in itself. Once the leather was removed from the hot water bath, it was often brushed with a mixture of melted wax and pine pitch. As the leather dried, the heat from the cooling material helped draw the wax deeper into the fibers. This created a sealed, hydrophobic shell. If you were to strike such a piece of armor with a heavy poleaxe, the energy would be distributed outward, away from the point of impact, rather than concentrating in one spot. This is why many historical specimens show surface scuffing, but rarely catastrophic structural failure. It was the medieval equivalent of modern energy-absorbing foams and hard-shell polymer composites.
As we moved into the 15th and 16th centuries, the rise of powerful, portable gunpowder weapons, the arquebus and the early musket, rendered much of the personal protection of the medieval era obsolete. A lead ball fired from a distance could pierce even the thickest plate steel, making the nuances of boiled leather techniques seem archaic. The specific recipes for Cuir Bouilli were passed down through guilds as closely guarded trade secrets. As the need for the armor vanished, the knowledge was not written down in textbooks, it lived in the hands of the masters. When the guilds died out, the art of effectively curing leather to a rock-hard state largely died with them. By the 18th century, the term Cuir Bouilli had shifted from referring to a functional military technology to describing decorative leather items like book covers and fancy boxes. The sophisticated, life-saving science of the medieval battlefield was reduced to the aesthetics of a library shelf.
It wasn't until the late 20th century, with the rise of historical reenactment and experimental archaeology, that hobbyists and historians began to reverse engineer the process. They found that it was notoriously difficult to replicate the quality of museum-grade medieval armor. Most attempts resulted in leather that was either too soft or became so brittle it would shatter like glass. What they rediscovered was that the process was entirely dependent on the tannage of the leather. Modern leather is often chrome-tanned, a chemical-heavy process that makes the leather soft and pliable for wallets and jackets. Medieval leather was vegetable-tanned, using tannins from oak bark and other plants. When experimentalists returned to these traditional, slow tanning methods, the Cuir Bouilli technique suddenly became viable again. This rediscovery opened a window into the past that many had considered shuttered forever.
When researchers finally hit upon the correct combination of oak-tanned leather, specific water temperature, and resinous additives, they were shocked by the results. The resulting pieces were not just replicas, they were functional equivalents. They could withstand archery fire at point-blank range and deflect glancing blows from heavy swords. It became clear that the medieval armorers were not simply throwing things into pots. They were conducting rigorous, empirical experiments over hundreds of years, refining their methodology through trial and error until they reached the pinnacle of their craft.
Looking back at the medieval armorer, we see more than a craftsman. We see an early material scientist.
He didn't have a microscope to see the collagen fibers or a thermometer to track the exact degree of denaturation, yet he achieved results that are physically complex to replicate even with our modern understanding of polymers. Today, we look to nanotechnology and synthetic polymers to create the next generation of body armor. Yet, there is a profound humility in realizing that nearly 700 years ago, a man with a vat of water and a piece of cowhide had already solved the problem of impact absorption with elegance and efficiency. The next time you walk past a piece of leather, consider the hidden potential of those fibers, a testament to a time when survival was a craft, and the smallest technical detail
could change the fate of a kingdom. History is often written by the victors and those with the most permanent monuments, but the true story of civilization is often found in the discarded, the forgotten, and the practical. Every time we analyze a technique like Cuir Bouilli, we aren't just learning how to make armor, we are learning how to look at the world differently. We are learning to appreciate the ingenuity that persists in every era, waiting only for us to pay enough attention to find it again. If you enjoyed peeling back the layers of this forgotten history and want to dive deeper into the science behind the legends, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community. We explore the intersection of the past and the present, bringing the lost ingenuity of human history to light every week.